Will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Donald Trump promises flurry of executive orders on first day back in White House. On the campaign trail, Trump pledged mass deportations of illegal immigrants in the United States and said at the rally that would be one focus of the blizzard of presidential paperwork. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump said on Sunday he will sign a string of executive orders on his first day as president to set our country on the proper course. Speaking to supporters at a MAGA Victory Rally in Washington, D.C. on the eve of his inauguration, Trump pledged to act with historic speed to fix what he sees as a raft of problems. On the campaign trail, Trump promised mass deportations of illegal immigrants in the United States and said at the rally that would be one focus of his executive orders. The invasion of our borders will have come to a halt, and all the illegal border trespassers will, in some form or another, be on their way back home, he said. However, some experts say that deporting millions of undocumented migrants would face significant logistical hurdles and legal challenges, and the costs could run into hundreds of billions of dollars. Trump also said he would issue an executive order delaying a TikTok ban so that we can make a deal to protect our national security. The popular video streaming app had gone dark late on Saturday after the Supreme Court upheld a ban on the app on national security grounds, which was to see it go offline on Sunday. But hours later, the app returned to the relief of its legions of dedicated users. Thanks for your patience and support as a result of President Trump's efforts. TikTok is back in the U.S., read an announcement from the company. Trump's legal authority to unilaterally decide not to enforce the law, which passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in April and was upheld by the Supreme Court on Friday, is unclear. But the rapid developments over the weekend served as a reminder of how dramatically debates over technology, social media, and national security have changed since Trump was last in the White House. It also signaled how closely Trump is following those shifts after waging a successful campaign in which he made inroads with voters in part by harnessing the appeal of some social media platforms. But I said, we need to save TikTok. We have to save a lot of jobs. We don't want to give our business to China. We don't want to give our business to other people, he told his supporters. Trump had previously said he has a warm spot in my heart for TikTok, saying that his account on the app helped him tap into a younger voter base to win the 2024 election. But it was Trump who initially spearheaded efforts to have it banned on national security grounds. In 2020, towards the end of his first presidency, he attempted to ban TikTok with an executive order and pushed for the app to be acquired by Microsoft. In response, TikTok filed a legal challenge against the ban. Trump also took a swipe at outgoing U.S. President Joe Biden, criticizing his time in the office as a failed administration and promising to end the reign of a failed and corrupt political establishment. He took the credit for the Gaza ceasefire deal, which took effect on Sunday morning, bringing a pause to 15 months of devastating fighting in the Strip. The first group of Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Gaza were released the same day. All of this in the Middle East in less than 3 months without being president. We've achieved more without being president than they've achieved in 4 years with being president, Trump said. Washington was one of the mediator countries in the ceasefire negotiations. Representatives for both Biden and Trump took part alongside Qatar and Egypt. Trump's inauguration will take place in Washington on Monday at 6 p.m. CET. The decision to move the event indoors earlier this week was made due to the frigid temperatures forecast in the city. German ambassador warns Trump will test the U.S. constitutional order, report says. Ambassador Andreas Michaelis said in his confidential diplomatic report that the Trump agenda would rob the legislative branch, law enforcement, and media of their independence. The German ambassador to Washington wrote in a report back to Berlin that he expects Donald Trump's second presidency to largely undermine the system of democratic checks and balances in the United States. The German news agenda, DPA, reported on Sunday. Ambassador Andreas Michaelis said in his confidential diplomatic report that the Trump agenda would rob the legislative branch, law enforcement, and media of their independence. His diplomatic note was sent to the German Foreign Ministry and to the office of Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin last week, DPA reported. The report was made available to several media outlets, including DPA, and was being reported in Germany on the eve of Trump's inauguration on Monday. Michaelis wrote that he expected Trump's agenda to bring a maximum concentration of power in the hands of the president at the expense of Congress and the states. His policy of maximum disruption, the breaking up of the established political order and bureaucratic structures, as well as his plans for revenge, ultimately mean a redefinition of the constitutional order, Michaelis wrote. The Foreign Ministry said it does not comment on internal papers, analyses, or embassy reports as a matter of principle. However, it said it is clear that the U.S. is one of Germany's most important allies. The Americans chose President Trump in a democratic election. Of course, we will also work closely with the new U.S. administration in the interests of Germany and Europe. It said, according to DPA, Trump arrives in D.C. as organizers scrambled to move inauguration indoors due to cold. Before the president-elect had arrived in the Capitol, groups of mostly female protesters began taking to the street to march for women's rights, which they believe are under threat from the incoming administration. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has arrived in Washington, D.C. to celebrate with family, supporters, and political allies ahead of his second inauguration on Monday. Trump's celebration of his return to power got underway on Saturday evening with a fireworks show at his Trump National Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia, about 48 kilometers outside Washington. He arrived in Washington as organizers of the ceremony were scrambling to move most outdoor events inside due to forecast frigid temperatures, making it the coldest inauguration day in 40 years. That includes the swearing in of the president and vice president that traditionally takes place on the steps of the Capitol. It will be the first time since President Ronald Reagan took the oath of office in 1985 for his second term that the ceremony will be moved inside the building. I think we made the right decision. We'll be very comfortable now, Trump told NBC News in a phone interview on Saturday. Trump made his way from Florida with his wife Melania Trump and their son Barron aboard a U.S. military C-32 aircraft on a flight dubbed Special Air Mission 47, a nod to Trump becoming the 47th president. It's a courtesy that's traditionally been extended by the outgoing administration to the incoming one. Trump did not make a government plane available to President Joe Biden ahead of his inauguration in 2021, and instead the Democrat flew to Washington on a privately chartered aircraft. In the same NBC News interview, Trump confirmed that his administration would begin its effort very early, very quickly, on following through on a campaign promise of mass deportations of migrants living in the U.S. without legal permission. Federal immigration officers are expected to initially target more than 300 people in the Chicago area with histories of violent crimes after Trump takes office. According to an official familiar with the planning, well, it's got to happen, and if it doesn't happen, we're not going to have a country any longer, said Trump, who declined to say where the deportation operations would begin Trump left office in 2021 as a political pariah after his refusal to accept his loss to Democrat Joe Biden led a mob to overrun the Capitol. He then broke tradition by skipping Biden's inauguration. Biden will adhere to one of the most potent symbols of the Democratic handover, welcoming Trump to the White House and joining him on the ride to the Capitol before Trump takes the oath of office. The first time Trump was sworn into office 8 years ago, the former reality TV star billionaire came in as an outsider disrupting Washington's norms. His swearing in drew large protests and some clashes in the street. This time, Trump told NBC the theme of his inauguration speech would be unity and strength and also the word fairness. But even before Trump arrived in the Capitol, groups of mostly female protesters began taking to the street to march for women's rights, which they believe are under threat from the incoming administration. "I just didn't want to sit home and fret in front of the TV," said one of the protesters, Melody Hamoud. "I wanted to feel like our movement still has energy and be around others who felt the same." Saturday's march, rebranded the People's March from the Women's March, promoted themes related to feminism, racial justice, anti-militarization, and other issues, and ended with discussions hosted by various social justice organizations. Protesters held signs with slogans including Save America and against abortions, then don't have one. Women outraged over Trump's 2016 presidential win flocked to Washington in 2017 and organized large rallies in cities throughout the country, building the base of a grassroots movement that became known as the Women's March. The Washington rally alone attracted over 500,000 marchers, and millions more participated in local marches around the country, marking one of the largest single-day demonstrations in U.S. history. This year, the march is expected to be about 1/10 the size of the first one and comes amid a restrained moment of reflection as many progressive voters navigate feelings of exhaustion, disappointment, and despair after Kamala Harris's election loss. I'm here because I want the world to know that the majority of Americans do not support this administration, and it's important for us to continue making our voices heard, said marcher Jill Parrish. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to stay updated with the latest news.